Good evening, YouTube. I want to make this my first video as a booktuber, and it's going to be on the Penguin Classics tag that Steve Donahue put up. So I've got a glass of wine here. Okay, so I have flipped the camera around and we're looking at this collection of Penguin Classics of various stripes. And I don't know, maybe I'm going to be disbarred from having this video tagged because they're not clearly all black spine penguins. In fact, a tiny minority of them are. But I'd like to go through them anyway, just very quickly, to show you all the various infinite wide variety of penguins that you can get. So starting down here, we have some older black spine penguins, a couple of the newer ones, some pretty old orange spines, some denominated there in shillings and pence. That PG Woodhouse one there looks quite new. It's not. It's just in amazing condition. I bought that recently in a second-hand bookshop. Here's some other books. There's Robert Graves' I, Claudius. I'm pretty sure I have that in a black spine penguin, the Claudius the God, but it's not here. Conor Cruiser Bryan, some more modern fiction. A Confederacy of Dunces. That is a Penguin Classic. It says read classic, read red on the back of it, so I haven't seen many more of those. This green book here is a Penguin Classic. It's an old book, an anthology of restoration poetry, Augustan poetry. Again, here's an old type of classic here, Ian Foster, a green one. I haven't seen many of those. This is a very modern and extremely cheap €2 penguin, £2, Tale of Two Cities, and very cheap paper, cheap covers. So access there for people who aren't particularly flush, like myself. Here are some nice hardbacks that came out more recently. I'll pull out this little guy here. So you get these little dust jackets. Inside you have a white cover, Nabokov, Nin. It's numbered actually, is it? Number 12 in the series. Again, stiff enough spines, but pretty nice paper. So again, a nice little edition. I have some Evelyn Waugh stories there in that edition. Again, some more orange spine penguins, and this Muriel Spark, again another inexpensive type of penguin edition. Then these are more the ones with the critical apparatus in them. So I have some green spines here, Fan O'Brien, George Orwell, Frank O'Connor, and then the more modern version of those Penguin Modern Classics. This is one of these deluxe ones here. This is Franz Kafka, The Train Was on Time. This is a new, sort of, very new type of Penguin Classic. Again, it's got there's a series of these which are post-war sort of books, shorter fiction, European writers series. You can see there's a couple more of those. Can the camera focus? No, I'll read them for you. I can't read them, I'm too small. It's okay. But again, these have wraparound covers and a critical introduction. This one here is from Anna Funder, who wrote Stasiland, which I'm sure a lot of people have read. This is Heinrich Ball, The Train Was on Time. Just read that recently, actually. And then I want to show this because I think Steve was saying that one thing he hadn't seen in Penguin Classics was a series of standalone plays by Shakespeare. So I have one here. It is a penguin, the new Penguin Shakespeare, Taming of the Shrew, in association, well, used and recommended by the Royal Shakespeare Company. So I think good for teachers. And again, if we look inside, let's see, we have an introduction. and some further reading recommended, and a commentary, an account of the text. So again, that is some kind of Penguin classic, and you can get all the plays in that edition, I think. These are called Penguin Popular Classics. They don't have any critical apparatus in them. They're just a very cheap way of getting your hands on these books. So it's The Woodcutters by Thomas Hardy. There's just a little introduction about it, not too long before you're straight into the text. A preface, and preface is by Hardy himself. So there you go. Quite a few of those. Penguin classics from the mid 20th century. So okay, that's the set of books we have there, and I count 62, but there are more somewhere. How many Penguin classics do I own? I've no idea. There's 62 here, so there you go. I've explained that. So what's my history with Penguin classics? So, like a lot of people, I would have started with Penguin classics at school. I certainly had Emma, I remember, in the Black Spine edition at school. The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy I had in the Penguin classics at school. What else did I have? Some Steinbeck. I'm pretty sure I read The Pearl in a Penguin classic edition when I was doing my, what we used to call the intersearch, it's like a junior high, I guess, and probably Catcher in the Rye. So these kinds of texts as a schoolboy, I would have had them. And then I would have gone on to university, where again I studied English, and I would have had Penguin classics coming up all the time there. I actually picked out 2 books here which I do have since university. So this one is At Swim Two Birds by Flann O'Brien. It's in pretty well read state. It's one of my favorite books, and yeah, there's my signature inside and the place I went to college. I need to show that. Brilliant book. I actually have that. I have a second edition hardback of that. The first edition having been bombed by the Luftwaffe, so very hard to get your hands on. And then I found this book, Two Tudor Tragedies, one by Norton and Sackville and one by Thomas Kidd. These are pre-Shakespearean tragedies which I took in a survey course, and I don't remember a huge amount about him, but this is a long time ago. So that's my history with those, and of course since college I continue to buy them, like everybody. They're fantastic. So third question. Penguin classic classic logo is a penguin, the most famous flightless bird, allegedly. What's a classic that just didn't take flight for you? I don't know what to say about this. I tend not to think that if I'm finding something hard going that it's necessarily the fault of the text. I just mightn't be able to appreciate it, or I haven't done the groundwork, or I often think that, and I often find that actually when you come back to something later, you're much better able to understand it, having read other things in the interim. But what have I got here? There are things here that I maybe just don't feel that keen to read. Burmese Days by George Orwell. I just find that quite a text that's quite resistant to me getting into it. Not that interested in it. I do like Orwell's essays, but there you go. Lucky Jim, I see there, allegedly an extremely funny book, but it's not making me corpse like Flann O'Brien would. So, but I'd like to give that another chance again. Maybe I'll just pick it up some evening and just burn through it, and maybe it is quite amusing. So then, Penguin Classics began in 1946 with EV Rieu's translation of the Odyssey. What's my favourite book from 1946 or the 40s in general? I probably should have thought of this before I started. What's the publication date on and it's from Two Birds. I think it's 1939, is it? Yeah, it's 1939. I'm going to sneak this into the 40s. It was blown up by the Luftwaffe, so probably 1940. Anything else there? It's too hard. The question is too hard. Let's see. Penguin Classics tries to enshrine the classics of literature. Name some books you'd like to see enshrined. Okay, I do have 4 books here that I think I'd like to see enshrined. And I'm just going to preface, actually, I'll just go straight to the one that just should be, no questions asked, is The Leopard by Giuseppe Tomasi di Lampedusa. This is a Panther edition. It's also in vintage. I know that Penguin owns vintage. This book is one of the most important, most beautifully written books of the mid-20th century, and it certainly should move over from vintage now into the Penguin Classic catalogue. I don't know why not, why it hasn't been. There you go. It's amazing. And some of the sentiments in that book have entered popular consciousness. Here's a science fiction book that should be a Penguin classic. It's Frank Herbert's Dune. I didn't originally read it in this edition, but I did buy this Sci-Fi Masterworks edition, of which it is #1, I think. So there we go, an indication of its importance. It's quite a nice edition, but probably the paper could be a bit nicer. So yeah, I would like to see that with a critical apparatus. It remains relevant, obviously. And then finally, a left of field choice. Well, not finally, but just to preface it, I have here a New York Review of Books classic. So I have a few of those as well. This is called Poem Strip, and it's a graphic text. It's not a great one. It's very abstract, but I love and collect graphic literature. And so, just to show you, it can be produced in this sort of, it can be produced in this format. And the graphic novel that I would recommend for inclusion in the Penguin Classics lineup, with critical apparatus, maybe good quality matte paper that you have in the black spine editions, I would suggest Mouse by Art Spiegelman. Obviously, absolutely fantastic book. I have it in this pretty nice edition, but it's on this nice matte paper, and this kind of woodcut style I think would be very appropriate in a Penguin Classic edition. Probably the most important graphic novel of the 20th century. And then this one, just to annoy Steve, who probably should be annoyed, I'm going to suggest the inclusion of Less Than American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Whatever you say about it, I think it is an American classic. For me, it's in the tradition of Ouroboros by Huysman, especially with these long lists of luxury goods and items. So I'm going to suggest that. Okay, I realise I forgot to answer question 4, which was what was my favourite Penguin classic. And okay, I'm going to disappoint Steve again. I'm going to opt for Ulysses in this edition, which is the Annotated Student Edition. And what's great about this is that it was prepared by Declan Kybert at UCD. It has huge introduction, and then it also has, well, first of all, it's printed really nicely, similarly to the original edition. So you have the nice big margins in the text, and then you have huge chapter by chapter notes with everything you'd ever want to know about all these details about Dublin. And you read this book with 2 bookmarks, one for the notes and one for the text itself. So that's probably my favourite Penguin Classic edition.